Command Point now has merch. Link in the description. Warzone Studio was kind enough to send out a couple of their battle mats for us to review, and I have to say, you guys, I absolutely love them. The mats we received have the kill team layout on them, making it quicker and easier to place objectives and terrain pieces to create a good play experience. The mousepad material the mats are made from is an upgrade from the foldable cardstock boards that you are used to seeing come in kill team boxes. Warzone Studio are even helping support the channel by giving us a kickback for each order placed using the link in the description below. So make sure to check them out, and thank you to Warzone Studio for sponsoring this video.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Command Point, and not just Command Point, but the 12 Days of Kill Team making a triumphant return. This is our gift to you, the listener, and to whoever is out there interested in the factions we're going to talk about. So on the first day of Kill Team, we have a very special guest because we have one of the very few guests that was on last year for the 12 Days of Kill Team, but this time he's talking about a different faction. Orion Wilfong, you are here to talk about the Fellgor Ravagers, not the Gellerpox infected this time around. First of all, Orion, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Happy holidays to all the listeners. I'm excited to be here for the second round of the 12 Days of Kill Team here. It's a very fun series.
It is. It's a very fun series. It's a lot of work, but it's very, it's rewarding, and I enjoy it. And it's going to be very similar questions to last year when I talked to you about Gellerpox. And I mean, this time you're here talking about another melee team, not quite a melee horde, I would say, but kind of a mid-range team. So first of all, I mean, Gellerpox not Gellerpox, Felgor. I'm already like defaulting to Gellerpox with you. But can you talk to me briefly just about the general play style that Felgors have?
Yeah, sure. So these guys, they got 10 guys. They don't have a lot of range. If you like guns, this isn't the team for you. Typically, whenever I'm talking about a team, it won't have guns. They have pistols, which are fun. They can kind of do some damage depending on how you play. But mostly this is a melee team. It wants to get up in your face. It wants to fight your opponent's models. And who really knows the outcome on that? The team can be a little gambly in terms of hits. But they're very aggressive. They're very angry. And the rules kind of back that up where they don't die. They just get angrier. So this is a team you want to run up, shove them in your opponent's face, and then we're going to see where the dice land from there.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much sums up the play style. So happy to hear that. They're pretty beefy, and they hit pretty hard. So I'm going to go back to a personal favorite question of mine, a question that I think when I was asking it last year, I didn't realize how important it was to me. But one of the most important things, one of the most difficult things about learning a team and just playing a competitive game in general, is that first turning point 1. So can you describe to me, generally speaking, how you typically like to play Turning Point 1 with Felgor Ravagers, and like what factors into like what changes there?
So Felgor is turn one is one of the trickiest parts for me because there's a ton of combos this team can put together. All their operatives kind of play well with each other. Like you can give a comms boost to somebody to move dash, but then do their unique action because these guys have a lot of unique actions. Whether it's the Vandal who swings his hammer around to do some damage, or the Toxhorn to throw a bomb to get a bunch of stuns or mortal wounds on some people. Typically, when I'm playing this team, I don't want to take any damage turn one because I want to make sure all my goats at least get into turn two. So everybody's sneaking up the board unconcealed for the most part. I might have one or two guys hanging back who are on engage in case my opponent gets a little too close. Again, with this team, you can dash a bunch of your guys each turn in the strategic phase. So one of those guys will typically be hanging back in case my opponent wants to punish me a little bit turn one since I have no guns. And they want to push a little far forward. But beyond that, turn one, I just want to get to positions where I can really just start laying on all the goat men onto my opponent turn two. Beyond that, I always want to make sure I get somebody who does some amount of damage because I'm greedy.
Yeah.
Whether it's the hammer guy or the Toxhorn, I want to get even just one mortal wound. I want to get it. So I'll have that guy, the Toxhorn, the Flux Spray, or the Vandal, usually try to get some sort of mortal wounds out just to get a tiny little edge on my opponent. And then everybody else is just set up to ambush turn two, where they can charge from their concealment to engage and start getting some benefits.
Okay, so I mean, typically speaking, I guess in most matchups, is Felgor more of a 3-3 or a 2-4 turn one for primary? Like, are you looking to go even? Are you looking to like start behind and catch up a little bit? Or are there ever matchups where you're looking to go 4-2 and get like a big primary lead?
So you definitely can get the 4-2. This team has a lot of mobility. You have the free dash from the leader on a big group of guys, or maybe just one or two. But also you have the pregame dash, and you have also a +1 inch of movement, and you have somebody who can comms boost. So you can really, and you have an icon bearer. So you can really kind of take opponents' objectives if you really want to. And you have 10 activations. So if you're against a team that you can out activate, typically you can go to the 4-2. I usually play a little safer. I go 3-3. But unless my opponent has put themselves in a position where they can't really punish me, I'll go for a 4-2. I'll send the Death Knell, who is your icon bearer. He's a pretty tanky guy as well. I'll send him kind of forward to steal an objective last minute, and then they can't quite do much about that because you
Okay.
can't really take them off the point.
All right, cool. So we're going to turn the page here, and I want to ask you, because I think Felgors aren't typically seen as a team that's like very flashy. They're very like march up the board, and you know they're hard to kill, and they just sort of oppress the other team. But I want to ask you, in your opinion, what is that you can think of? What comes to mind is the coolest Felgor play you've ever made, like something that really like drew the attention of somebody like on a table over or something.
So the team, I think it gets a little bit of a bad rap of just like unga bunga, smack people with axes.
Yeah.
There are a lot of cool things you can do with the team. It's very combo based. One of your tactical ploys, Blood Sense, just lets you do a group activation if you killed somebody. And that in itself, if you set it up right, you can kill, do a unique action, and then somebody else goes next to him and follows up off that unique action to do something else. So one of the cool plays I did, this team really shines a lot into melee or like big hordes of models because there's a lot of guys to smack around with mortal wounds, a lot of splash damage you can do. And one of the cool things I did was versus Colt. I was playing a Colt player on the open board, and we really clustered in the center. He had like 5 guys in the center, and towards the end of turn 2, I sent my hammer guy into the middle of it. Somehow he got into the middle, and he got an APL boost. So he charged in. He swung his hammer to do a D3 +1 mortal wounds to like 5 guys. It was pretty great. And then he melee fought and got 1 or 2 crits and did more reap damage to people behind the target he was fighting.
Oh.
So in that turn alone, he did like 11 or 12 mortal wounds, but he lived. And then we went to the following turn, and then everything lived because it's Cult. So
Yeah.
so
Called
then I got
Felgors.
initiative. Yeah. And so I just used the hammer guy again. I swung his hammer around, dealt like 10 more mortal wounds, fought with him again and got a kill. And then he blood sensed into the Flux Spray, who then proceeded to do his little tornado attack and ran all the way through all the guys who just got wounded and
Oh.
dealt even more D3 +1 mortal wounds and killed probably about half. So in like 2 turns, I dealt like 30 mortal wounds.
Yeah, that's maybe the flashiest Felgor play I've ever heard of. So congratulations on performing that. I don't think a lot of people have done that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, weirdly enough, it only killed like 2 models because it was pre-nerf Colt. But
yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, pretty brutal, but very cool. I mean, against most other teams, that would have been completely insane. I mean, more insane than it already was. So, next question here. I want to just talk a little more like broadly speaking. What would you say Felgor's best and worst matchups are? And I guess more specifically, what denotes a good matchup or a bad matchup for Felgor Ravagers?
so they have a pretty decent matchup, at least the way I've played them to most teams. It can vary upon the terrain, what really skews if a team has a favorable matchup to me or not. There's one outstanding team, which is Kazarkin. And with the newest nerf to the team where you can kill a frenzied Felgor with a critical hit, that is one of the more worst matchups now because Kazarkin can kind of guarantee that with their ability for the elite points. So
Mm-hmm.
that's never really fun to face against if you're like out in the open and they frenzy a goat and then they can just kind of auto kill them. Um, so that's a hard matchup. Beyond that, though, the team has a very um, I want to say advantageous time versus anybody who has 8 wounds specifically. And that varies for a lot of teams. But the 7 to 8 wound mark is where every single one of your models can kind of two hit um, one of their operatives in melee, and that's where you want to be because some of these guys can get some serious double kills. Even if they die after they got a kill, they go frenzied and then they can go kill somebody else. So in that 7 to 8 wounds place is where Felgors want to be against because they can really just keep trading 2-for-1s with each of their guys if you play it right.
Okay, really cool. So I guess I want to ask about this is a new question. I didn't ask this question last year, but I think it's a helpful one. So when you're watching other people like learn Felgors or like ask questions about Felgors because they're getting into the team for the first time, what are some of the most common mistakes, or I guess even the most common mistake that you see new Felgor players making that would like they get rid of that and they just like level up their game like tremendously?
There's two. There's one personal one and one objective one. Um, the personal one is, well, actually, I'll go to the objective one. A lot of people think because your guys can just die twice, essentially, you can be very reckless with them. And that's not the case because a lot of times people will just rush them forward turn one. Maybe they'll get punished with a few of their guys dying. And like by the end of turn three, you only actually have maybe you have 5 models on the board, but like 3 of them are frenzied and they can't kind of do anything because they're frenzied. Maybe they get a kill, maybe they're too far out to do anything and they just die in the back lines. People play a little too reckless with the Felgors. And I think that's part of coming back to that stigma of like, oh, they just run forward and hack and slash everything. A lot of times, I think you run out of gas way too fast if you play too aggressive with this team, even though they're all about, the aggression. The second thing I see is the leader. A lot of people love to give him the plasma pistol because in Kill Team, we love our plasma.
Yes, we do.
Um, we sure do, but this team doesn't have a lot of rerolls and it doesn't have a lot of shooting buffs. When you put your plasma on your leader, you sacrifice a more subpar melee weapon for a plasma pistol that does damage, but it doesn't have anything to support it. And if you're rolling any ones, typically you don't have the CP to reroll those because the team is very CP hungry.
Hmm.
So you're really at the mercy of the plasma gods there,
Yeah.
which typically it doesn't really work out well for the leader. So I would recommend not taking the plasma. Despite it, plasma pistols are really good, just not for this team. I think it's a trap, and the melee weapon you get for the having the other pistol instead is way better.
Yeah, and not to mention, I mean, with Felgors, I mean, the way that Frenzy works is if you plasma overcharge kill yourself, you just lose your guy. You don't even go like at the end of your activation, you're gone. So that's
Yeah, that is
really
true.
that's devastating. Not that that's happening a lot because you have 10, 11 wounds, but still. Um,
I mean, it can because
yeah,
you're out in the open a lot of times. You don't have a ton of things to really kind of hide behind with 5-up saves.
right,
Sometimes your leader can get sniped because he is the one giving all those dashes out. People love to go for him to stop that.
right.
So you don't want
Uh,
those extra mortal wounds on top of it.
oh, for sure. So one thing I wanted to add, um, or I guess ask. So I guess like in terms of like the flavor for you, and not like a lore perspective, but just like as a player, what is it about Felgors that it appeals to you? Like what draws you to them? Um, as I guess a competitive player.
Well, as a competitive player, I love playing melee teams, and
Hmm.
any melee team that can kind of stand on its own and not just get immediately shot off the board. I like playing. And this team, it's obviously taken a few hits, but I still like them. I think they still have the chops to go toe to toe with almost any army out there, excluding a select few. And they're pretty honest about what they do. They just run forward and fight you. So it's not like your opponent's getting blindsided by some random play. But personally, I mean, I just like the team. They're so damn angry. And it really reflects in their rules, where they're
Yeah.
just getting rerolls because they didn't roll well enough, or they're so angry that they just threw away half their rerolls. Um, they're just too angry to die. I love that lore where they're just getting angry, just get steamed on the table every time a model dies.
Yeah.
It's just a very unique mechanic, and I like how they show up on the table.
Yeah, no, they're very like they're super angry. I mean, that's definitely the way to play them. One last question before I get to the final question. So, very quick. TAC ops can be very binary in this edition of Kill Team, or I guess in this season of Kill Team, ever since Crit Ops came out. What do you like to do for TAC ops typically?
Well, because I really just like getting in my opponent's face. I like to force reactions. I typically like to go seek and destroy. Even though recon is often the better option for this team because they have a lot of mobility and they can kind of stick in places because they don't just die as easy as
Right.
normal. So I really like seek. Typically, if I'm going seek, I'm going routes. I'm going eliminate guards if we're doing like loot or something. Maybe I'm doing um, the some of the faction tac ops. There's two that are good. There's one where you just kind of have to have five goat men within 6 inches of opponent's models or their drop zone. So it kind of rewards you just for kind of how they play. Can be a little tricky to set up and can get you in some trouble sometimes because you get a little too close. But I like that one.
Oh.
The other one is scoring their ways, which is just your opponent brought a big gun and your team's pretty angry about it.
Yeah, that's my
So
favorite.
if you, yeah, I like that one personally. It's not always the best choice, but it's very funny to see your opponent roll up with a plasma gun and you're like, I want him dead. We don't like technology.
Yeah,
Screw that guy.
right.
I take that one more often than I should, just because it's just a real big middle finger to your opponent.
Yeah.
So that's what I like.
All
But
right.
realistically, recon for competitive might be the better choice in a lot of matchups.
Okay, cool. And then I have one more question, final question. Last year I asked everybody what their favorite Christmas song was, and I'm swapping it up this year. Orion, tell me your favorite Christmas movie if you have one.
So I do have one recently.
Oh, okay.
I didn't before. Like if you asked me a couple years ago, I wouldn't have one because I'm
Okay.
really not a big Christmas movie guy.
Uh-huh.
Don't like Christmas movies. I didn't grow up with them,
Gotcha.
weirdly enough. So, but there's a movie called Klaus. It's a new animated movie, and I just randomly clicked it one day, and it was on Netflix. It's a really good movie.
Okay.
Um, it's kind of like a weird take on the origin of Santa Claus, where like post office worker comes into town and has to like fix up this really like broken down and angry town that's at war with each other. And then in the middle of it, kind of the birth of Santa Claus happens. That's the way they fix it.
Okay.
It's a really cool movie, and I don't know a lot of people that actually know it.
I will
So
have
I
to
highly
check it
recommend.
out. And everybody watching, go check that movie out. If you're subscribed, thank you very much. I want to get through this quick. And tomorrow you can tune in for the second day of Kill Team for a little bit of Inquisition intel. So everybody watching, have a good day. Happy holidays. Welcome to the 12 Days of Kill Team. And this is Shane and Orion signing out.
Happy holidays.